Welcome, Foul Tarnished. Welcome to the Roundtable Hold. You are listening to episode 4 of Elden Kings and Elden Ring discussion.
Starting out, we would like to once again announce that the PC Dark Souls 3 servers are back online as of August 25th. We'll see you at the Pontiff Sullivan bonfire. We'd also like to announce that the Elden Ring zine, managed by some of our affiliates, has begun announcing the contributor artists and writers. Check out their social media accounts for more details.
And not to forget the Elden Ring art competition held by the Elden Ring discussion page, and they also have like an Elden Ring art page. This episode is a special one where we have a guest star joining the Roundtable Hold. Someone much more popular and with far more experience than us. We'd like to welcome Furled Finger FightinCowboy to the Hold.
Hey, what's happening, y'all?
Yeah, welcome.
So one of the things that I thought was really interesting is it seemed at one point you were working a full-time job, you're streaming a few nights a week, you're putting out YouTube content, and I'm correct in that you have some kids as well?
Yeah.
Yeah. How do you kind of handle all that? Like, you know, that seems just like a lot. You know, I work a job, and I just can't find time to do stuff like that.
Just, ADHD and sleeping like 5 hours a night. It's a fun combination. So it's just kind of, that's like, this is my normal. Like, if I'm not as busy as I am like this, I go insane. So yeah, it's just, it's always been like that, the day job, the YouTube, the kid, the wife. Not obviously always the kid and the wife. They're more recent, I guess, additions, you could say. But yeah, I don't know. I don't really like take time to just like sit and rest. Like, I don't know. My brain is always just going. So I have to be, if I'm not doing something, it's just like, I don't know, it gets to me. So I don't know. Everyone always asks, they're like, how do you do all this? And I'm just like, I don't know. This is my normal.
That's definitely pretty crazy. I have a 2-year-old. How old's your kid?
Mine turns 2 in September, so he's already going through that wonderful age where everything is, what he wants and what he wants at that exact second. Otherwise, get away from him. That's.
Yep, I am experiencing that right now for sure. My son actually started to get into the habit of like, I have my room closed where I, do the podcasts and, play games and whatnot. And the second he can get in here, he runs and jumps up into the chair and just like grabs a controller and wants to do that. So it's kind of fun seeing that.
Yeah, mine'll, so if I'm recording, I'll shut the door down. But if I'm streaming, I keep it open and he'll just come in here and he's like, and he'll get up on the chair. And then it's like, because the first thing I do is I grab the mic boom and I'll push that away because I don't want him like jerking on it or anything. And so now, as soon as he comes in and he hops up, he swings the mic boom away. Like, comes in, hops in the chair, swings the mic boom away. And I'm like, good. He's a little too like, one of these days he's gonna hit it. He's gonna swing and hit the monitor probably because he goes real aggressive with it. But I'm like, oh yeah, at least he's learning that we don't play with that. So that's good.
It's cute that he takes after you. He sees you swing it away, so now he does it.
Yeah, the kids are, especially at that age, it's so cool to see because there's, they're literally just soaking up so much. It's amazing.
Little mimics.
Yeah.
Complete mimics. Yeah, that's really cool. And it's impressive that you're able to fit so much into a schedule. Before you were doing the YouTube and the streaming, like, what did your life look like back then? Was it just playing a lot of games and working, or?
So that was before I was married and with kid, obviously. So a lot of it was more me time. I think a big thing too is I started the channel right before I moved to Nashville for the full-time job. So when I first moved, a big part of it was moving somewhere brand new. Don't really know anybody in this area, so until I started meeting people, I just had a ton of time on my hands. So I kind of sunk that into the channel. Just spent a lot of time there, and then even then, I feel like once you're into like your 20s, most of the time trying to coordinate to hang out with people or do things, it's a weekend thing. Very rarely are you going to reach out to your friends on like a Wednesday afternoon and be like, hey, you want to go out and do XYZ? Like, it doesn't happen, because people have so many more responsibilities than we do when we're teenagers or whatnot. So I just basically sunk all of that extra time where I couldn't find things to do into the channel. and then just kept growing and growing and growing, and fast forward, and here we are.
That's really impressive. You said you moved to Nashville. Where'd you move from?
So I guess that originally I was a northerner, born and raised in New Jersey, and then I was got my degree down in Florida. So I was down in Florida for about 8 years, got my master's, and then from there, actually got laid off from my first job. That was fun. Fresh college graduate, get a master's degree, get a job straight out of college. I'm like, let's go. And then after like 3 months, they're like, oh, we've decided to can this entire program. And so me and like 4 coworkers all at the same time, just like our entire department, boom, no more job. So that was fun. So moved.
That's rough.
Yeah, moved back up north, moved in with my parents for a little bit, because I'm fresh out of college, burdened down with student loans, good old US of A. And just I actually did like construction work under the table, doing like French drains and stuff. So like, there's this is more a northerner thing than down in the south, but basements obviously can retain water, and so what the company I was with would do,
the little grates around the basement.
Yeah, but you go in with pickaxes and you basically dig an outline of the basement, and then you'd put in like some corrugated pipe, put in some rocks, cover that up, and I mean it's literally just like swinging a pickaxe and carrying buckets of rocks up the stairs. Not the type of work I thought I was going to be doing with a master's degree, obviously. But I mean, it paid under the table, and it paid great. So that was a small benefit there.
Yeah, I can imagine. And you got your master's in, I saw on your channel that you were a UI programmer or something along those lines.
So my undergraduate degree was human factors engineering, which it's more on more than I mean, it is very, very closely tied into UI and UX, but it's more on the user testing and the user experience, as opposed to just applying best practices. A lot of it is hands-on, working with people, iterative testing, A/B testing. I guess in Elden Ring terms, it would be like bringing in a sample size of like 20 people, having them look at 2 separate UIs, and then taking the feedback based on which UI people liked more to move forward. And then moving on from that, the master's was in systems engineering, which is kind of like it's an expansion on that. It's more, on top of still working with the people, there's more of an emphasis on like optimization. So, I mean, I don't know, it's hard to like, so right now, for example, I do work for the VA still. I still have the job. And what we do is we will map out a health process. Like, let's say the entire process of you arriving at a hospital all the way to seeing the nurses, seeing the doctor, getting your diagnosis, leaving. And we can push all of that into a piece of simulation software. And we can, count for different variables, wait times, how many people are coming in, number of doctors on staff, et cetera, et cetera. And so we can run thousands of iterations of this software with different variables, and then figure out stuff like, okay, well, based on the new software we're rolling out, we can see that we're going to need to increase the workload. We're going to need to have at least 2 more providers on staff. Otherwise, we're going to see a 300% increase in patient wait time with the additions that the new system is going to include. So it's a lot of like back-end optimization based on how much time you're going to end up spending doing something. So I know it's just, I'm getting kind of in the weeds here with the technical aspects of it, but it
sounds really interesting. I'm kind of doing something similar in my job, where I'm a sales manager and then like a call center manager. So there's something called it's not a piece of software, but it's like the Erlang formula, which was made by this Danish guy back when like the first call center was out there, and you input things like like the number of calls an hour, the average hold time, like shrinkage, the average wait time, average handling time, like all these different variables, and then it would like predict how many people you would need, which is crazy because the guy that came up with the formula, it's like fairly complex. Like I wouldn't be able to do it without the calculator, but it's like the first formula that was made for something like that, and it's the one that they still use today. But so it's like kind of on like a similar.
No, yeah, that's extremely similar to what I do. I mean, that all's discrete. So what I technically do is called discrete event simulation. It's basically exactly what you're doing, except we use software to change variables in it to calculate a bunch of different potential end states at the same time.
Yep, I gotcha. That makes sense. Very cool. It sounds like a pretty interesting job.
Yeah, it's relatively new. I mean, it started off kind of as an offshoot of like industrial engineering, but it saw a big expansion mainly in aerospace back in like the 90s and 2000s, and then started making its way into like automotive and healthcare and other industries where the iterations in design are so important. So it's definitely a fun career for anyone out there that's not sure what they want to do. Some good stuff.
Nice.
Yeah, it sounds fascinating to sort through all of that different sample data, all of the different iterations, and see how it changes.
Yeah, what I liked is, I mean, because it's engineering at the end of the day, but it's like people engineering, as opposed to just doing math or something all day. Where you work a lot more, because it's taking the data of people. So anyway, we're kind of
It's almost
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the last thing I would say about it is one thing that I knew this girl once that she was in charge of like the traffic lights, and then she would have to input all this different information about like when people are leaving and like where they're going and like traffic simulation. And I always thought that like that was super cool. She was just she'd, like stand by a traffic light and be like, this one's gonna turn this color while this one, and she like knew because she was the one that like set it up. It was pretty interesting. But yeah, anyways, kind of getting back to the gaming side of stuff. I know I'm sure you probably ask this all the time, but we have to ask. I'm sure the listeners are interested. But where did you come up with the name Fighting Cowboy?
So probably not as exciting as many folks would think, but I did a lot of martial arts when I was younger, and I really liked the anime Cowboy Bebop. And so
nice.
I just kind of pulled those two together and made Fighting Cowboy. And it started off as, I mean, it's like you're coming up with like your first Xbox gamer tag back when you're like 15 or whatever. And then I just stuck with it. And that was it. Moving forward, that was my name. So not the most
No, it's cool. I like that it draws from like your real life and then some influences that you really liked. And I think your branding as Fighting Cowboy, you've got a huge YouTube channel. I went and explored your Discord server a bit. Looks like you got like 8,000 people in there. So it's like, I think the branding and the name works really well, and it seems like you built a pretty awesome community around it.
Plus, Cowboy Bebop as a show is pretty phenomenal.
Yeah, it's I don't know, I consider it to be one of the gold standards of older animation. There's just, I mean, really, because I think a lot of things is so many. It's a weird comparison to make, but like how like one of the things I think shocked so many people with Game of Thrones when it made its surgence onto TV was that like characters weren't safe, characters would die, and a lot of shows these days, they end very happy. A lot of animes these days, the at the end of the day, everyone's okay. They'll live happily ever after. And Bebop was a show where that wasn't the case, and it went more into kind of like the grittiness of just, I mean, I know
spoilers always catches up.
Yeah. I mean, and obvious spoilers, but I mean, it's like 20 years old at this point. But like just you get to the end, and it's like basically, everyone's dying left and right, and you're just like, whew, this is getting kind of heavy. Like you don't expect that from a lot of the shows you watch, especially growing up when you're like 15, 16. You're not watching shows where like these characters that you become attached to over multiple episodes, they're dying. That's it. And it's not like, oh, they died to the bad guy. It's everybody's dying, because that's how it is sometimes. But yeah, so Bebop's excellent. And anyone that wants to dabble in anime, you can't go wrong with Bebop.
I gotta say, I think One Piece is gonna be my favorite. I don't know if you've watched any of that.
I've tried. The thing with One Piece is what is it, like 1,500 episodes at this point?
Yeah, something like that. I've been watching it for like years.
Yeah, so like people are always like, oh, you should check out One Piece, and I'm like, yeah, let me just get right on that. There's no time, Yeah. Like if you watched it, but like, no, I'd have to like abandon my wife and child to try and get into that show.
Yeah, my wife and child watch it with me, and like so her and I, we watched it intermittently over like a few years. Like we lived in Oregon for a little while, and we watched like a couple hundred episodes, and we didn't watch it for a year. And then we lived here, and we watched a couple of hundred, and so like we're a little bit behind everyone else because they released the dubbed episodes like a little bit later, and I prefer the dubs just because I don't know, I speak English, but yeah, it's been a long journey, but it's been a fun one.
Yeah, I've been I got my wife into Gintama, but it's just, I mean, it's especially with the baby now. It's hard to find time to watch anything together.
Yeah. Just out of curiosity, does she work or does she stay at home with the kid?
No, full stay at home mom. We actually we did the math on it because she was working obviously before the baby was born, and just the way the math worked out, I'm like, unless you're making, I think for where we're at in Nashville, we did the math, and she would have had to have been making, I think it was like more than 75,000 take home to like offset the costs that would go into having someone taking care of the baby, the amount of time that would be needed.
Yeah.
So I'm like, yeah, let's I'll handle the bills. You just worry about taking care of the baby. And I mean, honestly, it's nice though too, because once the kid's grown and he's going to school and stuff, she can go back and do whatever she wants, re-entering the workforce. But I mean, those early years, you never get those back. So it's nice, and especially with me being, work from home, I obviously get to spend a ton of time with them as well and help out, which is really nice. Because I remember growing up, my dad was a railroad engineer, and so he was up and gone. He was out the door for work by about 4:30 in the morning. He would get home at 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Working all day long. He would crash on the couch and take a nap. So I didn't really get to spend a lot of time with my dad growing up. So I wanted to obviously do the opposite of that with my own son. So it's with both her being able to not have to worry about working, and then me being able to have a career where I can work fully from home. It's really just a boon, I guess you could say.
Yeah, no, that's admirable. My dad was in a similar boat to yours, where he was a carpenter and, woke up early in the morning. He sometimes didn't even get home the same day from work, so lots of time spent working and out of the house. So it's good that you can spend time with your kid. It's something I'd like to do if I ever had them, children.
Yeah, the kids are awesome, and yeah, I'm in the same situation when it comes to the daycare thing, and I think it's like you said, it's awesome because you get to hang around for those first years, and those are really important, and you don't get them back. But it's also somewhat messed up that like childcare is so expensive that it makes more sense for someone to like not work than to work. And
yeah, no, I mean, well,
kind of backwards a little bit sometimes.
Yeah, it's just what can you really do?
Yeah. But yeah, I kind of wanted to get back to your channel and streaming and whatnot. So just out of curiosity, do you have any like favorite games that you've streamed?
So I mean, I don't know. I think when it comes to streaming, I'll mix things up a lot. I think even at the start, I made sure I wanted to establish my channel very much as variety. Just because playing one game too much, it starts to it burns you out. And I think there's a lot of people I know, even in the Souls sphere, that happened to. They put all their eggs into the Souls basket, and then after like a year and a half, 2 years, 3 years of doing Souls, they're like, I don't want to do this anymore. So I've always made an effort to kind of just do everything, and I think that helps being like super ADHD, because I'm anything that comes out, I'm like, I'll try it out. But Monster Hunter is a pretty safe bet. You can always count on that. It's just a good solid stream game. The occasional battle royale isn't bad, but I'm very sparing with them these days because that genre can burn you out pretty fast. Ironically, the Souls games I find to be more entertaining episodic as opposed to streaming. I think a big part of that, at least with Souls definitely has a very backseat centric community. Is the nicest way to put it. Like you can't stream a Souls game without somebody that's never talked in your chat showing up and being like, you should XYZ, and it's like, oh, thank God you're here to tell me how to play this. I never would have figured it out. But yeah, so I don't actually stream Souls that much, but I think you need games that have a good grind. So like Neo, I've always felt was a really fun stream game. Monster Hunter is a really fun stream game because both of them have a very consistent grind loop that can keep you busy, that you can keep coming back to and keep being entertaining with.
Nice. Yeah, I've tried both. Neo, I have a little bit more experience with. Monster world I got into for a little while, but I never fully, I don't know, in the same way, where like anything comes out, I'm gonna try it, and I like a lot of like weird indie games and just a huge variety. Although as of recent, I've got sucked into the like games where it's just like I don't know, I trying to play something and it just doesn't like an older Souls game or Sekiro or Bloodborne or even Elden Ring. I'm kind of on that like a little bit where I'm taking a break just because that game it's super good and the replayability is really good, but I'm just kind of waiting for some DLC or something to come out before I get back into it. Ian, do you have any experience with either Monster Hunter or Neo?
Yeah, I actually really like Neo 1. It's like gameplay wise, I think it's way more punishing than the Souls series, and like it's so much more like oriented towards beating the shit out of you and killing you, sort of like how Dark Souls 2 is, rather than pacing the game with story elements the way the Souls usually does it. But that's fun, and like you say, Cowboy, there's the whole there's like the Diablo style randomized loot element that keeps things
Yeah.
exciting. I also I never really got into Neo 2 the same way, but Neo 1, since it takes place during the Sengoku period, it has so many like really funny Japanese historical like details going on. It's got everything centered around the character I can't say his name, Nobunaga or whatever.
Yeah. Nobunaga.
And the level where you go to the remnants of the Shinobi clan, which like historically it's sort of awful because he went and invaded them and then executed like almost every single person from the clan, which is why when you go there it's all ghosts in like the ninja house. But it stuck out to me so much because the Toad boss it's just like the clan leader turns into this demon toad. And I don't know, do you remember that level at all?
Yeah, no, they do a really good job of like while it's a mix of real life events along with like weaving in Japanese folklore, like the yokai and whatnot. It's I don't know. I think Neo's in it's a really unique spot that fuses, because it's obvious like there wasn't some guy running around summoning spirit dragons to fight off demons in the Sengoku period, but they do a good job, I think, of fusing kind of that factual events that did happen at some point in history, along with a more open-ended like action RPG. It's just a really good blend.
Yeah. And I think they really do handle the story elements well too. They get into the darker sides of the actual historical conflict, but then keep it light with like, this main character, William the Weeb that comes from Britain and learns the way of the samurai.
The original weeb. The very first.
It took me 2 tries to get into Monster Hunter world. I played it on release. A lot of the games I play are like social things, or I read them like books. So I either like really story-oriented things like Souls or RPGs, or I like multiplayer games like Monster Hunter. So I played it with my friends, but burnt out at Pink Rathian. I don't know, there's like a difficulty spike there that I just wasn't jiving with the first time. But I replayed it last year and went all the way to the end game boss, and I really liked it. I actually think that Neo and Monster Hunter as games are harder than the Souls series. I wonder what you have to.
I think it depends. I think Neo at the start of Neo, I think Neo is harder at the start because of the additional systems like learning to key pulse, because I mean, God, if you miss a key pulse, you lose all your stamina. That's insane. But at the same time, I think once the combat clicks in Neo, Neo allows you to achieve a power fantasy that we do not get in Souls games. Like, I mean, outside of stuff like Firestorm and Demon Souls, Neo, you can make builds that are designed to literally one tap bosses on the hardest difficulty of the game. And it's a power fantasy. You're trying to see just how ridiculous can I make my character. So I think endgame Neo can be significantly easier than Souls, but I think the learning curve to get there is higher. As for Monster Hunter, I don't know. This is I've seen this come up a lot because I'm in both of those circles very intimately, and I think Monster Hunter, depending on I don't know, I think it's a toss up because at a base level, I think Souls is harder, but once you get up to stuff like for example, Fatalis and Iceborne. That's still to this day like one of the hardest boss fights I think I've ever done, because not only are you fighting this incredibly hard boss, but you have this timer. Like Fatalis was infinitely harder to me than Medir, Placidusax, Ancient Dragon, Dark Souls 2. Like there was, I mean, God, I literally streamed, I think for, it wasn't straight given, but it took me like 36 hours of fighting to kill this damn dragon.
Wow.
It's such an insane fight. And you know, because you have 3 carts, you're locked to, I think it was either 25 or 30-minute time limit. And so, you know, like there wasn't downtime. You couldn't, you know, like, oh well, you know, let me just back away and heal. No, you couldn't back away and heal. You stayed on that dragon, or you were going to lose the time limit, and then you were just going to be pissed. So that, you know, stuff like that, yeah, that's harder than any fight I've had to do in Souls, especially because it's not just the raw difficulty of the fight, but the time. Like imagine imagine trying to fight you know, Dragon Lord, Placidusax, or I'm trying to think of some other really big ones, Gale. Like imagine a fight with Gale, but it lasted 20 minutes long. Like you're I mean literally your nerves are just like, oh my god, I can't fuck up. Like you are so on edge with a fight like that. And that's what some of the late game Monster Hunter stuff can turn into. So that's where I think Monster Hunter is harder than Souls games. But early on, nah, man, that Jagras, the Rathian, no, those are, I mean, there's a learning curve, but once you get them down, I don't think those are harder than Souls games at all.
I would agree with that. You put it well.
I love that feeling of just that being on edge with a boss, especially since you've like put so much time into it, and just like I mean, it can go one of two ways, where it's like he's one hit away, and then you die, and it's like this. That's a crazy feeling in and of itself. And then also like when you actually get it, it's like, oh my god, like I can't believe I finally just did that.
And I think that's what's pulled so many people. To me, I think that's probably one of the biggest factors I think in the growing success of the Souls franchise is it gives you a sense of reward that not a lot of games do. You know, there are very few games where you beat the boss and you have that genuine excitement that comes from beating a boss in a Souls-like.
Yeah, I'd say that, you know, I think that part of that comes from the fact that Souls games are very careful about their presentation of like goals, story, and player mechanics.
Yeah.
So that when you get to a boss and you get paced by it and you die a couple times, when you finally learn it and win, it's somewhat because of your level, somewhat because of your player skill, and somewhat because of what you learn about the boss. So it's, you know, it really like, it leads you into it, but it does so in a way that presents it as an accomplishment, you know, whereas I think with some of the other games of today, like they're designed in such a way where you just get a quest, and when you complete the quest, since it was all laid out to you, it's not as much of a path of discovery. I think, you know, it's a matter of presentation to some degree.
Yeah, it doesn't. Yeah, Souls games do not feel like you're just checking off something on a list, whereas that's a lot of games do. A lot of games have that. Oh, okay, I did it. Okay, good. Let me just mark this off and on to the next thing. It doesn't. Souls, it gives an actual sense of accomplishment.
Speaking Souls series now a little bit, considering this is an Elden Ring podcast, how do you think Elden Ring compared to some of the earlier Souls games? Because I definitely, you know, played them all, seen the videos on your channel.
So, I personally, I like it more. I mean, I've always been a big fan of like large open scale RPGs, and I think one of the nice things about Elden Ring is the flexibility. Like your first time, it's really easy to get lost, and on subsequent playthroughs, once you start knowing stuff and realizing like you can blitz through the game incredibly fast. And I'm not talking from like a speedrun perspective, but even just a player that has knowledge of, you know, where certain weapons are, where certain upgrades are, you know what the critical path is to get through. I mean, you can burn through the game in probably, I'd say 20 hours while comfortably getting like really high-end upgrades and really cool spells and stuff. You know, not even rushing necessarily. But it's that freedom of approach that I think sets it apart so much from the other games. Is, you know, like, because regardless, you look at all the Souls games, Dark Souls 1, 2, 3, Demon Souls, there is always, the path is fairly straightforward. You're always going to, okay, you're going to go kill the gargoyles, ring the bell. You're going to go down, kill the spider lady. Dark Souls 2, okay, well, we're going to go through and gosh, I haven't played Dark Souls 2 in so long, it's hard to even remember. But we're going to go through the Lost Bastille. We're going to go through, make our way up to Drangleic. And then, it's very much like you're going through the motions, whereas Elden Ring, I feel like there's a huge amount of flexibility, and then your critical path doesn't even really start until like Altus, and at that point it's just capital, fire giant, Malekith, end. So you can burn through those things pretty fast, and outside of that, you have this. I mean, all the underground zones, you could skip them completely if you wanted. There's a ton of content there. You could either completely skip Caelid or Liurnia, just depending on which way you want to go. So there's a lot more freedom in approach than we've had in other Souls games before, which I think we're going to see Elden Ring talked about for a long time. I think it's going to become the new Skyrim of gaming, just minus the subsequent yearly re-releases.
Yeah, I've compared it to Skyrim. Yeah, I would say that it's the same. I think when back in Skyrim days, when Skyrim was a new thing, one of the most exciting things of that was like discovering all of these new areas and all these new spells or weapons and whatnot. Like, it was very vast, and the locations did look different. And I think Elden Ring, like my first playthrough, was just such a full experience. Being transported to Caelid, and then like every area that I opened up, I think like first going into Lendale, where the I forget what they're called, but the things that blow the horns. Gideon, you got the name for those?
Things that
envoys.
The bubbles.
Yeah, the envoys. Yeah, but like I remember, like I think it was late at night, and I think I was just about to wrap it up, but I had just beaten that Dragon Knight Rider. I forget what his name is too, but anyways, and then you come right out of that alleyway, and they're like blowing the horns, and you can like overlook the entire city, and it was just such a feeling, and I got that like quite a few times throughout the game.
Yeah, there's definitely a level of scale that we get in Elden Ring that I think it's hard to really get that same feeling in a lot of Souls games, because I mean there's epic moments in all the Souls games for sure, but like you said, that moment when you first get to the capital city and you just see the whole thing, and like there's the calcified dragon just sitting there that's been down and stuff, it's a very different feeling. You're just like, damn. Or probably for me, I think the biggest is when I first crested the hill in Altus and you see like the true Erd tree and everything else, you're just like, whew.
Yeah, even the skybox changes.
Yeah, like it's a whole ass, just like, oh wow,
it feels like the land of the gods.
Yeah, and I don't think I've ever had a feeling that was like that in the other Souls titles.
I'm the same way. Even the soundtrack that changes for Altus Plateau and then subsequently Lendal, it's like this really melancholic but almost sort of grand song.
Yeah, it's it's literally like you're stumbling onto like a lost civilization, and you can still like sense the glory that's there, but it's not what it used to be. It's just, I don't know. It's a different vibe.
I think the closest Dark Souls gets to it is when you reach Anor Londo, like seeing the capital city of the gods and the fortress is sort of akin to seeing the golden rooftops of Lendal itself, but then like it never captures that open world, like you say. Dark Souls 2 attempts it with traveling all over the continent, but it's so disjointed and level-based that you don't feel it the same way. Mm-hmm. And Dark Souls 1 isn't even based on an entire continent. It's more like you're just only in Lendal itself, and then you hear about all the other places, like the Dragon, like its own Wizard Dragon Academy, or like the distant lands of Astora. Cosmosis, did you have anything to add?
Oh yeah, I was just gonna say the other thing too was, especially for such a small file size, like I don't think that was ever talked about. Like when it initially came out, it was like not that many gigabytes, and I was like, oh, I wonder how long this game is gonna be. And then like, you can't see most of the map, and then you keep seeing more and more of it, and you keep feeling like, oh, I got to be close to the end or something like that, and then you're just
nope. No, it's just
like
yeah.
I added an extra 10 hours to my playthrough because I thought Landel was the end. I was like, I'm gonna go explore everything and make sure I've done it all. And then I beat Morgott, and Melena's like, nope, fuck you. And
No, yeah, Elden Ring is I think back in my review of it, one of the things I said is it's a game that the key word is just there's more, because every single time you think you're like, all right, I've done it. I think here we go. We're coming up on the final boss. It's like, no, how about we give you a whole new zone? And you're like, oh, okay. All right, I did that. Here we go. This is going to be it. Actually, not quite. Here's 2 more new zones. What? This is when does this end?
So awesome. I know in an interview, Miyazaki was saying like one of the biggest challenges, which I think they executed on perfectly, was he was like, with a game this big, it's going to be hard to like keep the player interested. Where like I definitely have played games that are big or long games where I feel like they're like just dragging on occasionally. But like this, it never felt like it was dragging on in the first playthroughs. It was just like every time it was such a pleasant surprise to find out there was like more to do and more to explore.
yeah, I didn't even begin to get fatigued until I was doing maybe like Fire Giant or Farum Azula, and even then it was fatigued in the sense of I was like, oh gosh, these are harder than everything else. I'm sort of getting tired of the gameplay, but the story had me so gripped and like wanting to discover how it ends with like the Elden Ring with Marika and everything that like I pushed through the difficulty, which I thought was sort of cool. Like, Ludo narrative integration.
One thing that I think changes in my experience of the game is like at the beginning of it. It's just funny that you're talking about exploring all of Lendale. At the beginning of it, I'm like every single item, like I need to find it, and then like by the end of the game, I'm like nothing's gonna change. Like I'm as powerful as I am. Like I gotta go do things and fight bosses. By the end of it, I'm just like strolling by items.
It's so funny in retrospect seeing it, because like in the Let's Play, I don't know. So I have this like perchance for finding OP stuff. Like I mean, like I think one of the reasons I love Neo is because of how OP you can make your character. And so obviously I had Elden Ring pre-release, and we didn't know what was going to be broken or anything, but I was doing a faith build, like a faith strength build, and I found Blasphemous Blade, and I was like, this sword's super cool looking. There's like little remnants of flesh moving around on it. It has like a heal on kill. Like this, I'm gonna make this my main weapon. And obviously I found Mimic, and I was like, oh dude, this someone can use my Mimic, or it can use my own thing. Like this is super cool. I totally want to do this. So I had, my first playthrough, there I am running around with like Blasphemous Blade and Flame of Frenzy and Mimic. And I remember Millennia, I think I had like 2 attempted her. Like, because the first attempt, anytime you fight Millennia for the first time, the fight starts with her like jumping down your throat. And then subsequent times, you walk through the fog gate and then you actually square up. So that first time I was like, oh, okay. And then the second time I went in, and it was just like me and the Mimic Blasphemous Blading her into oblivion. And I had people that were like pissed in the comment section. Like still, if I go back to the Millennia episode, it's people that are just like, this is fucked up. This is not fair. Cowboy used some bullshit strategy. And it's like, I didn't, it's pre-release. And I'm like, how was I supposed to know that this was going to be, one of the most broken strategies in the entire game? Like, I knew it was strong, but like, I didn't know that this was literally just like invalidating the entire challenge.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
I took like 40 attempts on Millennia after doing most of the other bosses within 5 tries, so she sort of broke my spirit from
yeah, and that's because that's what people were saying. They're like even the other people I knew that were reviewing, they're like, oh dude, wait till you get to Millennia. And I'm like, okay. And then like I get there and I'm just like, yeah, it was a pretty cool fight. It wasn't bad. And they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, yeah, she's done like 2 tries. What?
So great. You just didn't get waterfowl, you like stunned it. Like,
yeah, I'm like, I don't understand what the problem is. I think I don't even know if she did waterfowl. Because this was back,
kill move. Like,
yeah. Well, this was back when because I don't know if Blasphemous still staggers her, because I haven't used it in a while. But this was, I mean, so pre-launch Mimic was strong. It was almost like a 1-to-1 of your character, and so we had both that and then the knockdown from Blasphemous, and it was absolutely brutal. Like she just couldn't fight back. She couldn't do anything.
I think it still does knock her down if I remember correctly. At least the last time I played. I actually kind of experienced the same thing, but in a later playthrough. But yeah, I think Blasphemous Blade, although OP, was I think one of my favorite weapons just because of the fact that it was like animated and had all the like crawling.
The writhing arms.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
whatnot.
exactly.
Yeah.
My first playthrough, I realized that I started as a samurai, so I immediately realized that not only were katanas OP with bleed, that I later on realized that the unsheath ability was just like goat.
Oh yeah, that thing slaps really hard, and you don't expect it because it's a very vanilla looking move, and then it comes out for like 2,000 damage, and you're like, what?
Yeah, it's crazy. And then because I was coming off of Dark Souls 3 and Bloodborne as my two latest games, which dude, From Software really focuses vitality builds in those games. The damage is cracked at the end game, so I was like, I'm gonna level vitality, and I have the stats for my katana, so I tried out a couple different weapons, always went back to the katana. It was a busted build to begin with.
Yeah, that was my one. So I don't know why I didn't even like think about scaling. I had Dark Souls 3 scaling stuck in my head. And so, if I remember, I think Dark Souls 3 was what? Was it 20 and 40 were like your two soft caps. And in Elden Ring, I mean 20 is like you're not even at the start of like your true vitality scaling. So I was going up against Radahn with 20 vigor, and I was raging, and I'm like, "He's bullshit. He's one-shotting me." I don't get, and like, I don't know. Nowhere did it ever like click with me. Like, maybe we should go look at our vigor and see how much points per point we're getting into health. Or I would have very quickly seen like, oh, I'm getting, I have no health at all. No wonder I'm getting destroyed. But it never occurred to me, and so I struggle bust against him for like the longest time because I had no vigor.
I think something significant is I know it's in Dark Souls 2, but I'm not sure about the other games, but leveling any stat gives you a soft increase to vigor, whereas in Elden Ring, it's only leveling vigor that increases your health. So
I don't remember that at all, to be honest.
I'm trying to remember for the other games.
I haven't played 2 in ages. I every time I've tried to go back and play Dark Souls 2, it's the slowest of all Souls games. It's slower than Dark Souls 1 and Demon Souls. It's weird, but it's very, I don't know, like looking back on it and trying to go back and play it. I mean, this sounds like blasphemy, but it almost feels like I'm playing Lords of the Fallen. It's just very slow. It's very clunky. The healing animation, you're like, oh, Jesus, I have enough time to like run to the bathroom and take a piss. It's so slow. And that's literally why I've never gone back and done. People are always like, are you ever going to do like a Dark Souls 2 modded run? And I'm like, maybe. No, the answer is no. It's the slowest Souls game ever. I can't stand it.
I was playing it recently and I stopped playing it because it was just like too slow. Like I ended up getting back into DS3, and DS3 felt like it was like 10 times the speed. I was like, what is going on with this? My friend has a mod on the computer though. I'm trying to remember what it's called, but we played it on my projector one night. We were all taking turns and playing, and it actually like speeds up the game quite a bit and changes some other things. Like you can move while you're healing, and there's a variety of things where that mod seemed, fairly interesting. But
I had absolutely have to have something like that to even consider going back to it, because it's just can't do it otherwise. It's too damn slow.
I saw a video of you yesterday. I was just like browsing stuff, gearing up for the podcast today. And because I'd been playing Dark Souls 2 recently, I was like, let me jump into these. And then like you're like right at the beginning of it, and you're saying something along the lines of like, this is, some people are going to say this isn't a tutorial. Well, I've like played it enough that it is a tutorial. So like, fuck you. And then you are like, you don't know how to like light, but you're like, I don't know how to use the torch. You're like, I haven't played this game in so long. I don't even know how to use the torch. I was like, this is a sick tutorial.
Yeah, it's rough. Well, my older, I mean, I've actually gone back and like looked at some of my old Dark Souls 2 content. I was a much edgier creator in my younger years.
Oh, it was hilarious.
Yeah, I had some friends they always like to bring back up. I had this PvP build in Dark Souls 2 that was basically just like a culmination of busted shit, like Santier Spear, the Pursuers. Like it was just all the most broken shit put into a build. And the video, I was like, yeah, some people have been talking shit about my PvP. So we're just gonna fight everybody with no editing. We're gonna see how many times I win. And like as I'm killing people, I'm like, sit down, kid. It's what you fucking get. And I'm like, oh my god. Going back and watching that video, I condensed into a fucking physical ball of cringe. I'm like, this is so bad.
That's one of the issues with putting content out. Sometimes you go back and you're like, oh man, I was totally a different person back then.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. Some edgy, 20-year-old, you're still, I mean, it's funny because when you're a teenager, you think like, oh, once you get to 21, you have this perception like, yeah, I'm an adult now. You don't know fucking shit. You don't know shit until you're like almost 30. No, you don't know shit. I remember I thought like 21, 22. I was like, I got a job. I got my own place. I know what I'm doing. No, didn't know shit. If I could go back in time, I would slap my younger self and be like, you're an idiot. Shut the fuck up and listen to people wiser than you.
I feel like that perpetually happens almost no matter what age you are, at least so far in my life, where like when you're young, you're like, yeah, I'm not a baby, I'm a kid. And then like the older kid is like, oh, you don't know anything. And then you become like a teenager. And then you have someone like 21 or 22 being like, you don't know anything. Like you still live with your parents. Then you have someone 30 telling a 21-year-old, like, you don't know anything. Like I feel like you perpetually are like, yes, this is the peak of my existence. And I know exactly everything in the world. And then like 10 years later, you're like, oh, okay, maybe not.
We'll be right back after these messages. In the meantime, what game do you think is harder? Soulsborne, Monster Hunter, or Neo?
Do you feel like your needs have not been met in the lands between? You have trouble obtaining healing physics. All of these problems are a symptom of big perfuma in the royal capital. For too long, they've lobbied with our lords to keep the secret alchemical practices of perfuming in the hands of the capital. Vote General Radon for Elden Lord, and he promises to share these advances in healthcare to the rest of the lands between.
For all you Hollow Knight fans out there starving after Silksong news, the Lord YouTuber Mossbag has released a new video covering all the trailer footage we've seen so far.
And to shout out a smaller YouTuber, down below you can find a link to Wheelchair Guy's YouTube channel, where he designs mouse-only video game content mixed with voice commands. It's a very cool step towards accessibility, and he showcases a nice kill on the Morn Castle boss.
And if you'd like to check out one of our own channels, the username is Gideon the Half-Knowing, and we plan to try posting an entire Elden Ring Let's Play, as well as some eventual variety gameplay.
And now back to the episode with FightinCowboy. Oh, I was just saying that Gideon did some research in your Discord, and it looks like you have an MTG channel in there.
I do. I don't play much these days, but there was I used to back in the day a lot. And the people that still played, it's one of those games where, like, because people were just there constantly calling card commands and whatnot, and I'm like, you know what, we're just gonna put you on your own channel. You can hang out there. So there's a remnant, and I occasionally still jump on, but the thing with Magic isn't just a game; it's a commitment. And if you are not playing, and you are not keeping up to date with like the meta and the cards, that's the other thing, that the cost to be a like consistent player in Magic, like keeping up a standard, dude, Jesus, it's like a fucking drug addiction, the amount of money you're spending to keep up.
That's why I stopped playing like with actual cards. I'll keep a deck here and there to play with friends, but I was doing a lot of Magic the Gathering Arena, and I was going to see if you had messed.
Yeah, no, and that's where I played, me and my friends, but it's we haven't in a bit, like, because I played through, I think what the last real arc I played was, I stopped. All right, so right around the second Nicol Bolas drop, where there was like the Planeswalker Nicol Bolas that could just straight win. Like his condition was like you win the game. That was probably the last. I don't remember what arc that was. See, now I gotta go. I gotta go look it up. Let me see.
I was doing the same thing.
MTG set archive. Now let me go to the Wikipedia. Okay. Okay.
I found it for sale. Conflux, is that?
So I played. Try to remember. I don't think I did Theros. I didn't do Ikoria. I think Ravenica Allegiance might have been. No way. Okay, so I did War of the Spark. War of the Spark was the culmination of Nicol Bolas. So yeah, I stopped before the Throne of Eldraine hit. So I played up to War of the Spark. I did all that, and then I skipped for quite a while. Came back during the Dungeons and Dragons thing. I played that a little bit. There were some pretty cool cards there. And then I came back to dabble during the most recent set with like the Streets of New Capenna, but I didn't start like buying cards and getting back into it. And even then, the Dungeons and Dragons thing, that was like I bought one set of cards and that was about it. I was like, I'm not going too deep into this.
Yeah, I also got a set of the Dungeons and Dragons stuff with my D&D group, funnily enough, to commemorate things and play Magic.
Yeah, there was some pretty cool stuff in that set for sure.
I liked how they had the different classes and like every races and everything represented. Like just cute.
My one friend made a so fucking annoying. He had a dungeon delve deck, but every goddamn turn, enter the dungeon, and I'm like, could you fucking stop? Stop entering the dungeon? Because like I'm trying to remember if it was like an artifact or something. It was either an artifact or an enchantment. But it was, it was one of those card types where like unless you had a deck set up to destroy that, they were just going to go hog wild with them. It's the most annoying thing ever to fight against.
Yeah,
And
it's rough.
I was just saying that I had an enchantment that I had a creature that would enter the battlefield, enter the dungeon, and then the enchantment was at the end of your last step. Exile target creature and return it to the battlefield under your control. So like every turn, I was like entering the dungeon 2 or 3 times with the certain combinations. I did like that set. It was pretty fun.
I think that's the thing that is fun about Magic, though, is there's so many just janky combinations you can do. I think one of the funner ones that I got hooked on. It used the Kraken card that was part of Ikoria, and you'd basically the way this Kraken worked is like when it came out, I think you would go through like you'd cycle like 8 cards that are 8 cards out of your library, and if you found a creature that had like a greater than or equal to cost or some shit, you could put it on the board. And so basically you'd get this thing out. It was like a 6-drop, and then you could cheat out like an Ulamog. And then at that point, it was just it was basically game over because you're dropping an indestructible Ulamog on like turn 5 or turn 6. But so that was, I don't know, the decks like that were always fun. But I think that the biggest I got into Magic was actually way back when. I used to play like paper Magic. I remember back when they first introduced the Eldrazi. I had a absolutely ridiculous Eldrazi set, and I was all about it. That was my jam. You had these cards that were like, what was a Miracle? It was like a 20 cost basically or something, or 15 cost, but like on play you got like a free time warp. It was indestructible. It had a ton of Annihilator. Like they were goofy cards, and I think there's a reason we haven't really seen a full resurgence of them. But very fond memories of them.
Nice. Orthonis, did you have some topics you wanted to get into?
If we want to circle back to FromSoft games, I know that you've played all of the Dark Souls 1, Dark Souls trilogy and Elden Ring. Have you done the Bloodborne, Sekiro, or Demon Souls?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I've done all of the FromSoft Souls likes. I've even done more than Souls. My start with FromSoft was actually Armored Core. I was really big Armored Core player. So all the rumors that we have right now, like Armored Core is making a comeback. People are like, I'll be streaming a Souls game. They're like, what do you think is the next Souls? Or what's the next FromSoft game? What's the next FromSoft game? And I'm like, it's Armored fucking Core. It's like, which is to be clear, it's nothing like a Souls like at all. But it is like, I don't know. When I think of Armored Core, I think of like the standard that mech games should be made at, because it is phenomenal. Like you could customize so many aspects of your mech. You could trim your mech, trim it down to where like you're basically just a walking nuclear bomb that would run into people in suicide. You had mechs built. I had one that was like super speedy, and it was just loaded up with shotguns, so it would just dash on in, blow somebody away with shotguns, and dash on out. I had mechs where their whole thing was once they locked onto you, it was just a never-ending barrage of missiles. Like there's just there's so much insane build variety in Armored Core, and the PvP is really tight. The PvP was super good. It was fast-paced. It was just there's nothing else like it, and we haven't had a Armored Core game. It's skipped a whole generation. The last Armored Core game we had was released on the PS3 and Xbox 360. That's how old it is.
Jeez.
Yeah.
I
So
was gonna say I've got to check it out, but that's wow.
Yeah, Armored Core fans have been waiting. People were like, "When's the next Souls game?" Like they have no idea. We're up there. Armored Core people are up there with like the Half-Life fans. We're like, please, sir, give us more. Like,
I know that even pre-DS3, people were talking about how they wanted the sci-fi Souls. So now that we've moving on from like Elden Ring and Dark Souls and fantasy, maybe we'll get an Armored Core sci-fi.
It's weird. We've seen attempts. I mean, you have the I think the best attempt at a sci-fi Souls so far has been probably the Surge. I played Dolmen. That was rough. And I tried playing God, what was it called? It was the other space Dark Souls, but with lots of unnecessary platforming. Hellpoint was the other one, and I mean, honestly, both of them are just they're not that good. I don't like bad mouthing games. I usually, if I don't like something, I just don't engage with it. I think it's I don't think it's worth wasting energy on something you dislike. But so I'll just leave it at that. They're not very good. And I don't know, man. There's something about the sci-fi setting. I think it's because when you think of Souls games, I think a big element of them is kind of the stamina management, the trepidation, the learning, and I don't know. I think there's a conflict with having that feeling, but also having like booster jets and laser swords. Like it's this weird disassociation, you know. So I don't know. There's been attempts. I think the Surge 2 has been probably the closest, and I don't even know if I'd consider that like true sci-fi because it's
very cyberpunky.
Yeah. It's more cyberpunk versus sci-fi because we're not really space or anything. But we'll see. I don't know. I think personally the next Souls, like I don't know if it's even going to be that I'm looking forward to would be Wolong, but I have a feeling that's going to be more in the Sekiro house just based on the gameplay we've seen. That's
what is it?
Wolong Fallen Dynasty. It's the basically it's Team Ninja's next big game, so it'll be the spiritual successor to Neo. So they announced that on the Xbox showcase, so it's going to be like day one Game Pass, which will be dope. But yeah, that's Koei Tecmo and Team Ninja Wolong Fallen Dynasty. They dropped gameplay footage for it at Gamescom. It looks fucking sick. It reminds me a lot of Sekiro, so I think we'll see it be more in that realm versus a strict Souls-like.
Sekiro is my favorite from Soft, and this gameplay looks awesome. I just looked it up. I know that after seeing the Zuli the Witch had some YouTube videos that were like funded by Accreditation, as soft advertising. So I was like crackpot hoping that we're gonna get a Sekiro 2 at some point. But
yeah, I don't know. I don't know if we'd ever get a 2, but I will say I was very surprised that we didn't get DLC because I thought that I feel like there was a lot of kind of side lore about like Tomoe and like her being the master of Genichiro, and I figured for sure that we were gonna see more of that explored in a DLC, like Tomoe's dream or some shit like that. But no, they just one and done, no DLC. Well, I mean, we had the boss rush DLC,
the boss updates and the skins, yeah.
But so I don't know. I'm surprised. I'm also very surprised we haven't seen Elden Ring DLC announced yet. I figured, game dropped in what was it, March, February?
Yeah, March.
Yeah. I think they're either going to surprise launch a PvP DLC, or they're going to announce a Dream DLC, and then it will release with a Coliseum update, similar to how the Ula Seal for DS1 DLC came with the I don't remember the PvP arena's name. It's like the atonement place.
Yeah, I'm surprised we haven't seen anything yet because I figure with DLC especially, you want to strike while the iron's hot. You want your DLC out while everyone's talking about your game, while everyone is like, oh yeah, that game is really dope, blah blah blah. And like there's still, I mean, there are still plenty of people playing Elden Ring. Obviously we don't have launch numbers anymore, but I think we're at the point where, like, even my friends that don't play Souls games that I talked into getting it, they are at the point where they're at the end of the game. They're like, yeah, I beat Fire Dragon, or I beat Fire Giant, and I'm going through the area, and there's all these like beast guys. I think I'm getting close to the end, and I'm like, hey, you're almost there. So like, if the mega casuals are almost at the end of your game, like it's time. You gotta get that DLC out. You gotta strike while the iron is hot. So I don't know. My guess is maybe we're gonna see a Tokyo Game Show announcement, but I'm very surprised they haven't had anything yet.
Yeah, no, I agree.
I did the math, and it's like if you go by the timeline of other Souls games, for what I don't know if it's just a weird coincidence, but a lot of Souls games release in Q1, like February March timeframe, and in almost every instance, the DLC would drop in October of the same year. So I'm like, it's coming, right? It's coming in October. Secret DLC. Like, you can't break it now, Miyazaki. You have to keep pace. So we'll see.
Well, while we're on the subject, what DLC, like, have you put any thought into what DLC we might get, or like what you might hope to see
So
expounded on?
personally, I would love more frenzy weapons besides that annoying spear that everyone uses. I think frenzy is a really cool mechanic, and I just want more weapons with the effect. Personally, with like shit I would want, I hope to see more like blood based magic, because like, to be honest, the blood sorceries are pretty lackluster. We have the two thorns, and then as for the blood incantations, I mean, Swarm of Flies was probably the most used, and besides that, you had Blood Slash, or not Blood Slash, Bloody. What is it?
Flame Blade?
No, the one where
Or
they
Bloody
do,
Talon?
yeah, Bloody Talon,
Bloody
which
Talon.
actually can do insane damage if you've never tried it. It's kind of ridiculous how much damage that can actually put out. But I mean, you had that, and then you had I think it was a Blood Boon, and like both of those are just kind of okay. There's nothing like they're all right, but I don't know. I would love to see more blood magic. I think it's just it's a cool thing that's relatively unexplored in Souls games. In terms of what, go ahead.
I have a sort of crackpot theory that Nicola might be the Formless Mother as the god of blood. So if there's a DLC, maybe we'll learn more about that and get that blood magic.
Yeah, I read there was some stuff about how based on lore, there's a good chance that Mikola is basically like androgynous. Like some people looked upon Mikola as a man, and others thought it was a woman just because of the beauty, almost like a Griffith type thing. Obviously,
Yeah.
reference in Elden Ring, big surprise. But we'll see. I think honestly, for shit we get for DLC, I think Mikola's Dream is one of the most obvious choices. We go to the Lord of Blood's arena, we touch Mikola's hand, we enter the dream. I think that's a very strong candidate.
Yeah, probably can collect Dream Mist, like in the data mined side quest that was cut.
The other thing I'd like to see, and this would tie. So there's the whole thing about Radahn basically holding back an alien invasion. That's his gravity power. Is and then there's you stuff the Onyx Lords, Estelle. That's the shit that Radahn was basically holding back in the sky. And so I'd love to see, because progress of the game, if we're given it's not critical path, most people are going to defeat Radahn. And so a DLC that follows up, Radahn is no longer manipulating gravity. What happens next? The shit that he was holding back, the stars that were being held back, how do they affect the lands between?
So I like that. And this is something I don't really expect, but might be possible, is in the past, in Dark Souls 1 and 2, there's a time travel mechanic, and in 3, time is just broken and everything is happening at once.
Yeah.
So obviously they like to play with time travel. And there's this event in game, like in the game's lore, the second defensive lane duel, where Godefroy the Grafted gets defeated by just like this random Dragon Knight, who's then given an Inner Tree Burial. And something that with the time travel stuff, in the past, what they do is they have the player character do some achievement. In Dark Souls 2, you beat the Giant Lord, and 1, you kill Artorias and defeat the Abyss, and then it's your like accomplishments glory is taken by another knight of the time. So I briefly considered that as a possibility. And like you said, the Frenzied Flame would be great to get more information on, because it really just goes into the heart of all of the different lore items, since it's so important to the Erd Tree and to America and the Placidus.
Yeah, I think we could also see something around the greater will in general. You know, the fingers, the Elden Beast, like more about their actual origin and where they came from and what's going on with them.
It's funny you bring it up, because actually in the lore episode we released previously, I had this theory that the Greater Will was born of the first Primeval Sorcerers, Glimpse into the Primeval Stream, because in the Founding Reign of Stars description it says that on top of the glintstone meteorites there was a hint of amber, and then later on we learned that the Elden Beast was born of, it essentially the Elden Beast is most likely the meteorite that crashed into Farum Azula and then became the god to Placidus. And afterwards, with the idea that fundamentalism is scholarship in nature, it sort of fits that the Greater Will and the Elden Beast as stars, the sun in particular.
I haven't looked into it. Is there any lore in the I know there's like an amber shard that you can use to during Celavis's questline where he's trying to convert Ronnie.
Yeah, essentially that basically the Eternal Cities figured out that starlight, when mixed in a certain way, could be used to create puppets and mind control people, and it could also be used as a draught to like get drunk on and do, it's like a drug. So Celavis, he wants to make an upgraded version of that starlight potion, but with a special amber shard of the starlight. And once again, we get into the amber associated with the Greater Will as the ancient life. And the reason that he thinks it will work on a demigod is because, the amber is associated with the destinies of demigods. And I think the Greater Will itself sort of is like the sentient prophecies associated with that destiny. Briefly getting into it from the Norse basis of the game, like the Norse mythology has this concept of the word, fate. And then the Norse king of the gods, Odin, is always trying to fight the word and extend his life because he doesn't want Ragnarok to happen. So Marika, as the god, wants to prevent her death and live eternally, but the Greater Will is the word, and her fate is like, bringing about her death with the game's events.
Actually, I like how I find it funny because I feel like there's so much, there are a lot of like lore podcasts and stuff going on with Elden Ring, but comparatively, I feel like the lore and the story this time was so much clearer compared to previous Souls-likes.
I agree. I think there's a lot less up to.
There's a lot less obscurity.
Yeah, it all ties, like, there's all of the separate storylines in the same way that Dark Souls 2 is really disjointed with a lot of storylines, but with Elden Ring, it's not disjointed. All of them tie back into each other and into the fate of how the Greater Will commands everything. It's
like so literally like everybody's story can tie into in some way. And,
So like clarifying one thing clarifies 10 others if you can, because everything's connected. It's really cool. It really fits with the paradigm of the game being regression versus causality.
As someone that, I've played the other games and I didn't fully understand the story. Whereas like Elden Ring, like by the time I finished my first playthrough, I had a pretty good general idea of like what was going on and who was who. To kind of get out of Elden Ring, I've been kind of curious. Do you watch stream? I mean, I guess probably not, knowing like what your life looks like and time wise. But do you watch streamers by any chance?
So back when I was on Twitch, I'd wrap up a stream and like raid somebody and maybe hang out and watch for a little bit. But these days it's just no. Honestly, like kids change everything because you don't have time. Like if I get done a stream and I was to tell my wife, hey, I'm gonna hang out and watch this other person play games for like an hour and a half, she's like, the fuck you are, get in here and help with this baby. So these days I don't know, I just don't have time. I don't have time for a lot of stuff. Like I'm constantly busy, but like people will be like, oh, hey, you see that football game? And I'm like, no, I just don't have time for sports. It's a Can't do it. There's no time. That's the thing. Like I'll watch a video occasionally from somebody, but I just don't have time to keep up with other streams or other streamers. Which, I mean, I guess the silver lining is I have managed to avoid pretty much all the streamer drama that's ever happened in the Souls community because of that. I just, I don't have time for that shit. I'm like, nah, I'm an old man. I don't have time to fight over dumb shit.
That's good that you avoided the drama. I don't know if you do, Gideon, but one of the reasons I had asked, I've always just kind of wondered the appeal of streaming. So, like in my own head, I'm like, I have limited time. I could watch someone play, or I could play, and like I've changed a little bit over time, where like I do find myself watching YouTube videos of someone playing this or that game. But I guess I was just kind of, I don't know, Gideon, do you watch streamers? I was kind of wondering what the appeal was, and why that was such like a big community around people streaming them playing games.
We've gone through a couple phases, mostly based off of how much free time I had, and if my computer had a dual monitor setup where I would watch a streamer while like playing a game, because I enjoyed the background noise, and if I'd played the game before, I didn't really need to understand the noise, like story that was happening. But no, like but I sort of agree. It's like a lot of the time it's sort of more fun to play a game than to watch someone. But then at the same time, I think that watching someone else, especially someone with good commentary or that's knowledgeable or skilled at the game, is really fun. Especially if you do it in concert with your own gameplay, like I was doing. Like,
Yeah,
I don't know.
that's I'd say from my years streaming, that's what I find is the majority of your audience. It's not a lot of people. They're not going to sit and they're not going to watch a stream the same way they would like a television show. Like you have a couple people that might, but like very few people are just going to adamantly pay attention and be ready to chat every second. A lot of people, they might put it on and background noise. I get a lot of people that tell me they'll put on my streams just because my voice puts their kids to sleep, which is like weird flex, but I'll take it.
Right.
But yeah, so some people will just use it as just like, it's just noise in the background. When I did watch streams, usually it's like I had something up while I was playing another game, just, like multitasking, just something to keep me busy. Sometimes it's just, people that are lonely, and, streams do give it's a sense of community. The more you're there, the more you hang out, the more you talk. And I think that's the big side of it is, let's say you move somewhere brand new, you don't really know anybody, but all these people that you've talked to on stream for years. And so even though you're in a new place and you might not know anybody, or you're not sure, how to spend your time, you could always just, whatever, I'm going to hop on the stream and I'm going to, bullshit for a couple hours. So it's the sense of community is a big part of it. But like I said, the other part I think is sometimes it's just nice to have something in there. It's like a perpetual audiobook that's just going on in your background.
Yeah.
Yeah, that clears it up a lot. I never thought about like watching a stream while doing something else. Like whenever I've thought about it, I guess I've always pictured people just like hanging out at their house and like watching the stream, and then that was what they were doing. So when you put it into that perspective, it makes a lot of sense.
As someone that's streamed for, like since 2012 or done YouTube, I think that like a lot of the online community has sort of gone through some general changes. And I mean, you said yourself that you used to be edgier, so maybe you've also gone through some changes. So I was curious if you had any insights on that.
Yeah, so I think so streaming wise, I think I don't know, it's weird because we've seen this space has evolved so much since I started, and I feel like I did get in there pretty early at the start, but we've seen such a big change. There's more interactivity options where you chat polls and little chat mini games and all this stuff. We've seen artists that their entire thing is just making emotes, making badges. So the whole like ecosystem, the whole sphere around streaming has definitely evolved into a really interesting place. Whereas I think back when I started, it was weird because it wasn't even like the idea of streaming. It was just like people were, I think a lot of people, we started off, we were making videos, and then someone goes, oh, you should do this live. And so it starts off where you're just playing something live and people are watching and you're kind of having a laugh together. The same as like, like when you're growing up, if you had a friend that came over and you're like, oh, hey, let me show you this game. I mean, it's literally that vibe just expanded out across the internet. And that's how, well, that is how it started. I think it's kind of weird because it's grown way beyond that. It's no more just like, hey, let me show you this game. It's a product, and you're selling a product. You're playing, but at the same time, you want to be entertaining and you want to be engaging. And you need, especially now, I think that's the hardest thing, is people that want to get into streaming. It's really hard because you need to have something that differentiates you from every other person that's out there doing it. And I think that's the thing that we have this, like, the upcoming generation. It's the first group of children that are going to grow up really in a world. Well, I guess not the first. I mean, my nephews are kind of growing up in that world already, but a world where I remember growing up, I would stay up late as shit playing StarCraft. My dad would wake up for work. It's 3 a.m. There I'm playing StarCraft. And I got what the hell are you doing awake? You need to be in bed playing these goddamn video games. They're not going to do anything. And now, I mean, there are people, self included, who video games have become an entire career. It's what pays my bills. It's what pays my mortgage. It's what, it's helping me save for retirement. And so, that was a concept that was completely foreign, 15 years ago. And so it's a really weird space now, because while it started off as, like I said, just that vibe of like, let me show you this cool thing I'm doing in this game. Now there is a entire industry, and arguably one of the fastest growing industries in the world. I mean, gaming now makes, I think gaming pulls in more money than like sports, movies, and music added up together. It's insane.
Yeah, it's the center of entertainment.
Yeah, and now especially and the spread we're seeing, fucking Halo TV show. We're seeing game animes pop up. We're seeing game TV shows, games that are being turned into board games, games that are turning into movies. Like it's turned into a self-perpetuating beast at this point. So it's interesting to see how streaming has evolved and where it's going to go here. Are we eventually going to be like full on, Ready Player One type shit? I don't know, but it's growing for sure.
Yeah, I think we're on our way there. Somewhat. I think that specifically, I listened to a lot of stuff that Mark Zuckerberg is doing like lately, and I think VR is headed in a pretty interesting direction. But on a side note, that's gonna be like the most amazing thing to just be chilling at home playing a game, and like your wife asks you to do something, and you're like, "Honey, I'm working."
I mean, it's not. You don't just get
A free pass.
Yeah, you don't get full immunity.
But sometimes,
yeah,
that would be awesome. I was kind of a joke there, but no, that'd be ideal. I guess that would definitely be a lot of people's. And actually, speaking on that subject, I guess that would probably be like a lot of people's dream job. People that love video games, like, man, I wish I could play video games for a living. Have you found that, I guess with a lot of things, in some cases you love what you do and then it is never a job, and in some cases when it becomes a job, you end up getting like a little burnt out and not wanting to do it anymore. Where do you lie on that scale?
So I still enjoy it all, but there are times, like, I mean, Elden Ring launch, I worked for, I don't remember the exact total, but like for the launch of Elden Ring, for the month of March, I put in it was a 400-hour month. And so, given that month made, it was a huge boost to the channel, both in viewership and income and everything. It was I mean, for 400 hours in a month that's a lot, no matter what you do. I mean, people go, oh, I wish I could just play games 400 hours. Imagine I walked in your house and I bet, all right, man, listen, to pay your mortgage this month, you're not leaving that computer chair for 100 hours a week. Like, you're going to be in that fucking computer chair 14 hours a day playing that game. If you get out of that computer chair, it's to eat shit and sleep, and that's it. And like, it sounds fun, but by like a week and a half in, you're fucking exhausted. You are mentally dead. That's the biggest thing, man. It burns you out.
It sounds draining.
Yeah, it's very draining. I'm like, yeah, I mean, it's not physically tiring. It's not like I'm having to, lift and carry shit. But I'll tell you what, you'd be sitting in a chair for 400 hours in a month, and your body feels like it's gonna fucking die. Like your back is just collapsing in on itself. So like anything, it can get tiring. I think the biggest thing, and this is one of the reasons I plan on keeping my kid away from just social media as long as I can in general. The internet is an incredibly toxic place, and that's I think the thing a lot of people don't get when they the idea of content creation sounds appealing, but they don't realize the toxicity that comes with it, because there's so much anonymity on the internet, and there's people don't think about how words affect other people. And so you put out a video, and this I mean, these days I see people that don't like what I do, I just mute them and move on, just simply because you can't afford the mental energy to care about it. But like, especially starting out, I mean, you're starting out making content, and you put a bunch of time, 5-6 hours into a video, you think it's going to be a hit, and then the video goes live, you have like 10-15 views, and then like the first comment is like, this fucking sucks, this person's better off hanging themselves. And like people will say shit like that. They not even a thought in the world, they'll tell somebody to oh, this work fucking sucks, go kill yourself. And then like, what are you supposed to do? You're expected to just take it. And then if you tell that person like fuck off, then you get called out. They're like, you don't know how to take criticism. And it's like, this wasn't criticism. You told me my work looks like fucking dog shit and told me to kill myself. Like, that's not criticism. That's you being a vitriol dickhead. And that's I think a lot of people don't expect that, man. It is. I know this. It sounds like man, Cowboy's being fucking spicy right now, but no, that's the dark side of content creation that people don't want to talk about. Is it can be incredibly toxic from certain people.
Yeah, and I think there's like two situations there that, like, one of them is like you're not looking someone in their face, so you feel like you can say whatever you want. Like there's something you would never say to someone to their face. Like,
and in the words of Mike Tyson, the internet has made people way too comfortable with saying whatever the fuck they want and not getting punched in the mouth.
Oh yeah, I saw that recently. That was a recent quote, wasn't it?
Yeah.
No, I saw it
because he knocked that dude the fuck out on the airplane.
Oh right, yeah, I do remember that. Yeah, no, he's completely right. And then the other side of it too, I think, is sometimes it's often like anyone that does create stuff, whether it's they write, they make art, they make videos, they do whatever, you don't hear that from as much, I feel like, a lot of the time, from people that don't do anything at all. And it's always like stop wasting your energy on putting down some, like, maybe it's not the best thing that I created, but like, I'm trying to create something. Like, what are you doing other than telling me that like my creation sucks? It's like,
no, yeah, and it's I mean, it's a thing with online culture in general, is this whole I don't know, I don't want to say just trolling, because I mean, mostly all is just trolling, but people that are just vitriol online because they don't think about the fact that there's another person on that other side of the monitor. There's somebody else the same as them that's experiencing what they're saying. They just, I don't know, it's it gives them a feeling of power to be a digital bully, I guess.
Yeah, it definitely
people
is.
like to feel smart with their pessimism. Criticism is always easy to give.
I think that this has been really awesome having you on. I was kind of curious, like, what is kind of like looking in your future? You have any game releases coming out, stuff you're creating that you're excited about? What's going on next for Fighting Cowboy?
Have y'all ever heard of Grounded?
I've been grounded. I don't know.
So there's this. It's been in early access for 2 years. It was made by Obsidian, and it's on Game Pass and shit. But it is a survival game, like open world. Think like Subnautica or The Forest. But
dude, sorry to. The Forest is such a good game.
Yeah, basically it's like Honey, I Shrunk the Kids as a survival game. You're like a kid that's shrunken down in your backyard. Everything's giant, the spiders, the ants, the bees, and we played a shitload of it when it released in early access, and the full launch for that comes up at the end of the month, and I'm really looking forward to it because it's super cool. I mean, I've played. I'm a big fan of survival games. I've played a lot, even the kind of janky ones.
Long Dark.
Yeah. Oh, well, I've played Long Dark. All right, that game is exhausting.
Yeah.
I would say in terms of like the multiplayer aspect, I would put Grounded. I think it's going to go down as one of the best multiplayer survival style games, just because it's genuinely a lot of fun. And you're like a little kid, and you're fucking making helmets and shit out of like grass and ladybug shells, and it's weird, man. It pulls out your inner child in a way, but that's going to be a lot of fun, and especially the multiplayer aspect, because I love a good game where I can just play it with friends and we can goof around and make a giant base with traps in the sandbox or something.
That's
I mean
awesome.
Yeah.
the sandbox of the world. I mean, like the literal sandbox. There's like, what's cool is that so they've made like the sandbox in your backyard that becomes the desert region. The little pond in the backyard, that's your aquatic region. So it's really cool what this game has done.
Obsidian as a company is really creative with their stories. So
Yeah.
I bet they've got a lot of really neat, clever little details in the game.
Yeah, for sure.
What system is it releasing on? Is it just Xbox or?
Xbox, PC. I mean, anywhere with Game Pass, I guess. I have it on PC. But yeah, I'm looking forward to that. That looks good. Obviously, the new God of War Ragnarok, that's going to be good. Wolong,
for that.
that looks good. There's a couple. What was that fucking Callisto Protocol? That looks pretty sick. Just literal spiritual successor to Dead Space. So there's a lot of stuff coming up in the works. Not much in the Souls sphere of things, but I have a very strong feeling that we are going to be getting Elden Ring DLC. Like, if we don't, I mean, let's be honest, it's the most profitable game FromSoft has ever had. For them to not do DLC for it would be, I mean, it would be a massive misstep. They would just literally, they'd be throwing away money. So we'll see.
Yeah, no.
I think we're seeing DLC either late this year, like October, November, or early 2023.
I'd have to agree there. Just two things real quick. Just to go back to what you were saying earlier. God of War Ragnarok looks like it's gonna be amazing. And then as someone that likes survival games, I'm sure it's on your radar a bit. But The Forest is releasing Sons of the Forest in October.
Yeah, it got pushed back though.
Again?
Yeah. It was because
I
it was
thought got
supposed to
pushed back
be.
October.
Let me see.
I've been waiting for that game. I love survival games. It's outside of Souls-like, I'd say survival games are probably my favorite type of games to play.
Yeah, we were talking about it the other day. Yep, 3 days ago, Sons of the Forest delayed again, but the new gameplay footage sure looks nice. Sons of the Forest has been delayed to February 23, 2023.
Kind of just ruined my day.
Yes, I'm sorry, man.
No, it's all good.
Oh,
Don't want you to be. October comes up, you're like, let's go, Sons of the Forest, and then someone's gonna come in. Actually, no.
Yeah, that's
for
rough.
long.
I'm glad I'm like learning now. The one positive I can say about it is there's so many companies out there that will just like push a game out for the money and like not even care. They're just like, okay, this is the date we said it's going to be. Like Cyberpunk. There's a whole list of games that got released that just should have never been released, and they should have been pushed. So like, although that depresses me, I'm like, okay, well that's 3 months more that they're going to make the game even better. So I guess February it is.
Yeah, I mean, I'm honestly February. I'm a little scared just because so many games are nudging their dates. February right now, February 2023 is going to be insane. I'm going to have to just like take time off work to be able to just record, not stream, just record.
Nice. Gideon, any closing thoughts?
no, I mean, I'm pretty hyped for Ragnarok as well. I love the God of War reboot. I don't play so many survival games. So yeah, thank you for joining us for the podcast, Fighting Cowboy.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, it was really exciting to get to talk to you. I'm sure some of the listeners will be happy to kind of, get to know you. I know at Reddit AMA, a lot of people saying that you changed the way they played Souls games and were their favorite, streamer and content creator. So I think
that's the goal, man. As long as I can teach people, help people, that's why I do it now. It's just, I don't know, it's fun.
Yeah, it was great to have you on. We're so happy that you're a good pillar of the community. You're knowledgeable about the games. You're like fun, peaceful, and moderating. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks for having me. I'll let y'all close things out.
And that concludes the 4th episode of Elden Kings, an Elden Ring discussion with our guest star, FightinCowboy. Thank you for joining the Roundtable Hold.
Thank you as always for watching, and leave a comment down below for whichever video game coming up that you're most excited about. I know I can't wait for Ragnarok and Silksong.
I know that I couldn't wait for The Forest, but apparently I'm going to have to because it was pushed back. But don't forget to check out our affiliates over at our Elden Ring discussion and their sister subreddits. And the Elden Ring contest on our Elden Ring artwork is ongoing until the 30th. So go and check out some of their beautiful submissions.
Yeah, I saw a fantastic depiction of General Radahn with both his gravity swords earlier today.
Keep an eye out for the next episode, which will be part 2 of the lore episode. It was nice talking with you, Gideon, and we'll see you next time.